All right, we are live, at least we should be, and I am pushing my luck today. Let's go live on Amazon here. So I am pushing my luck today, everybody, and the reason I'm pushing my luck is because I am starting a video shoot at 3 o'clock, and it never goes well for me when I start one this late. I like to get my video shot earlier in the day. But today what we're going to be doing is reviewing the new iPad, and it looks just like the old iPad, but it's different. So we're going to talk about what's different, and really the difference is inside. This has now the A12 Bionic chip, which is faster than the 7th generation iPad, which didn't have that chip. It had the older one. So this one is going to it's going to be kind of like iPhone 7 Pro level performance. So I think that's the big difference here. I just need to validate that is the case. And like the other day, I've got my new fancy thing here, so for example, here, I'm not picking any favorites here, but I'm just going to grab this one real quick here and just queue it up. So now I can pull up your YouTube comments while we're doing this. Isn't this fun? So I could have Paul here, and I can then have Recipe Bob here. See that? So I got all sorts of good stuff here. So it's going to be good, and we got everybody here. So it's going to be fun. It is going to be fun, and we're not going to be doing any politics on this channel today. So we're going to say goodbye to you there, and we're going to get you can watch the debate tonight and make up your own minds. You don't need to have me telling you anything. So what we're going to do here is we are going to review this thing, and it is going to take me a little while to do all this because I have a lot of stuff to cover. These iPads are getting more and more useful, and the more and more useful something gets, the more we have to cover. And in many ways, this is like a repeat of my last review of this thing. It's the same. I actually took my notes from before and just moved them over, but now this one does like 2 more things, but the old ones do also, right? So we have mouse support now, we have the new pen input option. So there's a bunch of different things that we have to cover here. What I'm doing is just putting the auto lock on a longer leash here so that it doesn't keep turning the screen off. So they have this thing in the settings called auto lock, and you could set it so it never turns off. I'm just going to set it to 15 minutes, and that should be good enough. And you can see how bright the screen is. Like, this is the one thing with these iPads. I have to like turn them down because the screens blow out my cameras. I don't have the best cameras, so it's a little more challenging there. So, so let's see how this works. We got a super chat in from Carol Cherminsky. Thank you very much for your super chat. Much appreciated. Yeah, these things are fun. I mean, I can grab Mark here and just put him up. Isn't that neat? So, yeah, it's good stuff. And T-Dub is here. Isn't this cool? So this links up with my my vMix software. So I have a little web page that I go to, and it has all your comments coming in. And then I can pull up different comments here, like DK Savage is here. I'm probably missing people. So here's Randwolf the third, or Randwolf 81 is the third one. And Roberto says he's the first. However, the first comment that I've logged is Timothy Rogers here. So isn't that neat? So I'm going to try not to get too distracted with your comments as they come in, because I need to get my you-know-what in gear and get moving here. Ryan Plumley has a good comment, though, that I will address about, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I was expecting them to maybe have the minimum SKU be 64 gigs, because 32 is very limited no matter what the platform, including the iPad. My kids have the 6th generation iPad, the 32 gig one, and we're constantly, you know what the biggest culprit is YouTube Kids. Even if you turn off, so if you have YouTube Premium and you have YouTube Kids, it automatically downloads offline videos. You can't control what it downloads, but it always keeps a bunch of stuff that they like to watch like on the unit. But even if you turn that off, it uses up so much space for caching and whatever that it constantly is filling up the storage. And if we want to update another app or add an app that we know we have space for, we have to delete YouTube Kids and reinstall it every time. It's such a pain. So it is a big pain in the tuchus, as we like to say. We got a super chat here from Chanflay98. Thank you very much for your super chat. We have NCS Trev from Maine. Welcome. Carol's wondering about the battery, and I'll cover this when I do the review, but the battery life on this is just as good as the prior editions. What do I have on my notes here? Same battery life as before, so generally Apple's, let me see what Apple's recommendation is here. And I've been running with this thing. I've been playing around with it for the last couple of days. The battery life felt exactly the same as the other one. Let me just pull up my notes here. Yeah, so they're saying about 10 hours, which I think is probably about right. You have a hard time killing these things. My iPad Pro, I'll go for days without charging it. I don't use it like a lot, but I use it a good amount, you know? It's amazing how good they are. Let me just look up the Apple webpage on the iPad here. Yeah, so this is just called iPad, by the way. So you have iPad Air, which is the mid-range, and then the Pro is the big one. So they say, and I will say this about Apple, is that when they say you get like 9 to 10 hours of battery life, you do. And I'm not just saying that because I like the product. I'm saying that because I've tested it, and it works very well. Kusama Games here has a question. I got to figure out a way to get this down to like one keystroke here. Would I ever talk about jailbreaking? I have not. I have covered it, maybe I've covered it long ago, and I'm reluctant to talk about it because the focus of my channel is generally more general consumers, and I am reluctant to recommend things that might create security issues for consumers or teach a consumer's child to do something that could, jeopardize security. So that's been kind of my reluctance there. We got a super chat from Zam, who says the minimum storage for iPads needs to be 256 gigabytes. It needs to be close to that because they fill up. And it's not the apps themselves, it's all the other stuff that goes into them that makes that an issue. Ryan says here, like, adding some micro SD or similar would be good. I will say, though, that now they have become a little less restrictive on external storage, but it's not quite part of the file system. So you can't offload like you can on Android. So on Android, I could download Netflix and Amazon Prime Video. I can offload all of that onto my, whatchamacallit, SD card, yes. And then just have it work as almost like an accompaniment to my internal storage. Here it's very separate. You can put a file on there and play a file off of it, but you can't use it as an additional storage option there. Let's see. Lots of comments coming in. And Seth M has been using vMix for 5 years. I wish I started using it earlier because I am very happy with it. So it's good stuff. Here's a funny joke from Paul. That's a good one, right? Mr. Foodmoon says iPads last forever. They do. In fact, you will break your iPad before it breaks. My kids. So I wish I had the cases in front of me. Maybe on Amazon, I'll find it on the thing. We got a case for the iPad that is super strong, and my kids have, they've had their iPads in these cases for over a year and a half, and we haven't cracked the screen yet, which is an accomplishment. These things they're tossing them all over the place. And they're not, just accidentally. It's not like they're mistreating them. But our iPad minis broke a lot quicker. Zam does a lot of drawing, and his images take up so much space. And this is an issue I've been running into with my daughter because she's been playing with, reminds me, I got to download Procreate on here. She's been playing with Procreate on her iPad, and her images are taking up so much room, and I've got no place to put them. And I can't even offload them to iCloud yet. I got to figure out, I got to work at that a little bit more, because I did buy the family plan for iCloud storage, and so that was tricky. Cartman Chili wants to know, is this the iPad Air 3? No, this is the iPad, the new 8th generation one. So what I like to do on this channel is review the stuff that is at the low end of the market. I do hope to get in the Air though, because I'm very intrigued with the new Air. So we'll probably get one of those in. But this is the entry-level model, which at the moment I believe is on sale at Amazon. If you go on my link in the description, hopefully it works, it'll take you right to this stream, and you can find a good deal on the iPad. And Mr. Food Moon makes a good point here, because that's true. The storage levels on the iPad are what the company uses to get more margin. They make a lot of money off of that stuff for sure. No question about it. Oh, this is a good point. I'm going to bring this up in the review. My Nerds wants to know how much air gap is there between the glass and the screen. It's probably hard to see, but there is a ton of air gap. It is exactly like the other ones are. So if you have like an iPad Pro, which I have, actually this is a good opportunity because I can show it to you. So this is my iPad Pro, and the air, like the screen is like right up against the glass. It's like right there, and you don't have this feeling like you're tapping on a brittle piece of glass. And here, there's a very big air gap. I'm not sure I can demonstrate it easily, but there's a pretty big air gap in between the screen and the display on this. And that does create some issues. And I just need to write that down so I don't forget to talk about it, because they have not improved that. It's funny, they have not, on the entry-level model, it really is the same as it was before. It's just now it's got a faster processor. So the 6th gen had a 9.7 screen, 7th gen, same processor, 1 gig more of RAM, larger screen, so it went to 10.2. The 8th generation, same RAM as the 7th, same case here as the 7th, but it now has the A12 chip. And for some reason, Siri thinks I'm talking to her. I'm not talking to you right now. I'll go turn her off. Okay. So that is that. All right. Ryan Plumley says, will Zoom be updated to send video while switching apps? I think that Apple restricts that. I don't know if you can do that on these. I'll have to check into that. But I'm pretty sure most of those apps restrict that as well. But we should probably mention Zoom calls. So my daughters have done like online learning with this too, so it should be fine for that. Thank you for the comments, everybody. This is really helpful in getting my notes put together. So I have a cheat sheet that I keep here for the review and all the things I want to cover. Kaylee has a very good point here. The Apple is getting back to the good, better, best scenario. That's right, because they used to have too many SKUs. So this is good. iPad Air is better, and of course iPad Pro is best, easy and simple. And she can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait either for the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro again, right? Because it's very confusing. What I want is the return of the 12-inch MacBook with an ARM processor. That's what I'm looking for. So that is that. Paul Blakewell here says, you can't beat an iPad Pro, but do they cost? They're very expensive. They're quite expensive. All right. Well, I am going to start recording. I told you I'm looking for trouble here because I am starting this review much later in the afternoon than I should, but we're going to try to shoot this. So keep the questions coming. And for those of you watching on Amazon and other places, here's what I typically do with these reviews, is that, or these streams, is that you're watching me while I record a video. And this is going to take probably about 2 or 3 hours to do. And then when I'm done, we'll have probably about a 12-minute video that this will encompass. And you're going to hear me screw up. You're going to hear me do multiple takes. It's going to be a lot of repetition, but it will come out just fine when we have an edited video. And you can see what goes into this. And we've got a lot of stuff to cover because the iPads have a lot of features now that they didn't have before. So it used to be like, okay, here's the iPad, you know what it does. But I think a lot of people aren't familiar with exactly what goes into these things. And I want to check one more thing here. I'm just looking on the processor. So this has an A12 Bionic, which is the same chip that was in the, yeah, that's interesting. So I got to look into this a little bit more, because what's interesting was when I ran the performance benchmarks on this, this chip was not performing. Let's see, A12 Bionic is on what? The A12 Bionic is on the iPhone XS and XS Max, the iPad mini 5th generation and the new 8th gen iPad. But when I looked at my, let me pull up my notes on this, because when I ran the benchmarks on it, it was better than what we got out of the 7th gen 10.2. You know, it was interesting that what was intriguing about the test, and I'll talk about this, is that the GPU felt like it was running faster on the prior version. And what this one is doing better with is the CPU performance. The processor is significantly faster, but the GPU isn't doing as well, at least in one of the benchmarks that we ran. And it's hard to base it all off a single benchmark. I think, you know, in actual usage, people aren't going to notice any real differences. So we'll have to see. Here, I'm going to pull up a few more questions here while I'm looking up some stuff. Bryant Mitchell wants to know, is this the cheaper iPad? And it is. This is the lowest cost one. So that is what that is. Kanol Gokel is wondering, do I prepare a full script before shoots, or do I just put down talking points and I kind of just wing it? And I found that works the best for me. Partly because it would take a long time to do all of the prep work and the writing, and I can just sit down and do it. Most of the time I can get my words out pretty decently. I just need to look up one thing, and then I'm going to get started here. I'm just going to log into my other account here real quick on my iPad Pro. And what I'm looking for is just the comparative note on this. Let me pull this up real quick here. So bear with me for 1 second. I'm just looking at my 3D Mark benchmark. If you want to see what I'm looking at, you can go to Lon.TV/benchmarks, and you can see exactly what I'm looking at. So what I'm looking for on this list is the 3D Mark slingshot test. And if I look on here, yeah, so it doesn't look like it has the GPU performance, at least by this benchmark, that the iPhone XS would have, which is significantly faster than this. So it's almost like they have they kind of tamp down the GPU component. And you know what I'm going to do real quick? I'm going to run that benchmark right now, just so you can all see it. Make sure I'm not crazy. So let's go run 3D Mark Slingshot real quick. And you can see this is the score that I got. I ran this a bunch of times yesterday, and I'm just not seeing the graphical performance that you would expect out of an A12 Bionic processor. So we're just going to check and make sure. Oops, just crashed on me. And I'm almost wondering if perhaps that this is just because it's we'll see if we end up shooting the review here. I may end up shooting it tomorrow morning and just showing you some stuff, getting some maybe we'll do some B-roll today. Maybe that's what we'll do. So I'm going to let this run again. But yeah, like I'm not seeing the frame rate that I would see out of the XS. So my wife has an iPhone XS, which has the A12 Bionic, and we ran this test on it. And we just didn't get the performance that you would expect out of the GPU side. So we'll let this run here. And while that's going, I'll take some questions here. So we have a good question from Babylon Era. He's wondering if am I interested in the upcoming Apple Silicon Macs? Am I ever? And here's why. I am a big fan. It's in my car right now. I had to bring it somewhere yesterday. But I am a big fan of the MacBook 12-inch. It is my favorite laptop of all time. It's not the most powerful, but it's very, very versatile. It's super thin. It's super lightweight. You know, as a matter of fact, let me go get it, and I will show you how much I love this laptop and to continue answering your question. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. All right, so we got the results here. It is doing a little better than it was before, but it's still like, check out the scores here. I'll see if I can zoom in on this. This camera gets a little blurry when it gets too close. So, you know what I mean? Like it's like GPU wise, and that's why I'm thinking like, am I crazy here? Let me pull up my spreadsheet again here. So 3D Mark slingshot test. Let me just wait for this to catch up here. I may just shoot some B-roll today because it's getting later in the afternoon and I'm ahead of the game a little bit on my videos. So, all right, so iPhone 8th generation 10.2. I'm just going to update my scores here. It's about the same as it was before, but so we got 4,789. And I got to go and edit this as my other account here. Actually, let me just double check the results here and see if it's way off. Yeah, so it's not even close to where the iPhone XS would be. And you would expect something faster. Now, this is the MacBook. This is the 12-inch MacBook. Apple doesn't make this anymore. This thing is awesome. Look how thin and light it is. It weighs like 2 pounds. It weighs nothing. It runs all the Mac apps. Does it run them as well as my heavier MacBook Pro does? No. But when I travel, if I ever travel again, when I did travel, this is what I would take. Look how light this is. I mean, it does everything. It's a computer, and it's got a beautiful screen. It's got great sound. I could edit video on it. And if you think about the fact that the Apple Silicon is very well tuned for media work. In fact, on the iPad Pro from 2 years ago, you could edit 4K video. And you can actually edit 4K video on this iPad if you wanted to. That's how powerful these chips can be. So you put one of those in here and run Mac OS X, you could get Final Cut Pro working. Win-win. I would buy this in a heartbeat again if it had that Apple Silicon. Meanwhile, they had this great design and they just canceled it. They don't make this anymore. And it kills me because the iPad, the MacBook Air is similar in weight, but it's not this. Like, this is the most efficient laptop I have ever owned. And I use it every day down here. This is the laptop that usually sits on my desk here. So it's super, super versatile. So if they do that, it would be great. So I'll have to check that out. Patrick Chang wants to know if I used Luma Fusion before. I have used Luma Fusion before, but not recently. Be a good real-world benchmark. I need to take a look at doing that. Martin Phillips wants to know, what's the price of the laptop? This iPad. It is $319 right now on Amazon. I got a link in the video description, and you can head on over to that. I did get another comment here on something I've already done on Apple Pencil alternatives. I've got a whole video on that. So if you're on Amazon, go and search for the Add to Knit Note Plus, or you can go on my YouTube channel and search for Apple Pencil alternatives. You can get one of these very inexpensively. So we'll have to see what happens. So Recipe Bob must be watching on his iPad because he used Scribble to write his message to me. Isn't that cool? This is a good point from Diablo. I didn't think about this. He said the bigger resolution on the iPad is pushing the score down. It could be, although I think, if I'm not mistaken, this benchmark runs at the same, resolution irrespective of the device. But we'll have to take a look at that. So you know what I think I'm going to do? Oops. What I think I'm going to do here is maybe we shoot some B-roll that I can use for the review that I'll shoot tomorrow. And that might be a better use of time this afternoon. Because I have a whole bunch of stuff to test. So maybe we'll start off with some web browsing. And I just want to kind of show the basics at work here. and then we'll kind of work our way through the rest of this stuff. Where did my little stand go? Here it is. So I got this little stand. This thing is a very handy little stand. If you're watching on Amazon, I have it selected right now. It always has a different maker. I think Amazon Basics had one for a while. This might actually, yeah, this is the Amazon Basics version. It's pretty simple. It just folds up, and you got a little stand. They cost between like $7 and $15, but it's a nice little stand. Isn't that handy? So let's zoom the camera in a little bit, and we're just going to do a little B-roll of web browsing. Although, you know, I could probably just shoot this thing, couldn't I? I'm like really hemming and hawing here. So I'll have to figure it out. Hey, Jake is here, everybody. Jake is the guy who edits all of our videos. So everybody said hi to Jake. Cyril wants to know, is this worth buying in 2020? I think it's worth buying if you are on a budget, because you can often get these things, you know, like when there's an iPad sale, these are the ones that go on sale. And this particular one is brand new, but its predecessors were selling for $250 at times. So I got two of these, you know, the older version of this for my daughters for $500. You know, put a case on them, and we've been very happy with them. The problem is, like, the bezels are just, right? It's just pretty bad there. All right, look, here's what we're going to do, everybody. I'm going to shoot this video, and we're going to try to get this done in 2 hours. Let's see if we can do it. Because I've done all the evaluative work already on this thing, so I think I'm ready to go. Okay. Let's get the show on the road here. So remember, we're going to be shooting a video live, and this will have me redoing things over and over again. Oops. So just be prepared for that. And let me scroll through here. All right. So let me kick it off, and we'll begin in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the brand new iPad. This is the 8th generation iPad with the 10.2-inch screen. This is the entry-level model for the Apple iPad line. And if you've got kids at home or just looking for an iPad that won't break the bank, this is likely the one to consider. It's got the older design, but it performs pretty nicely for the price point, and we're going to be taking a closer look at what this new one brings here in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All of the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this iPad is all about. All right, that's a good sign that I could get through the first part without screwing up. So I'm just going to add this to my clips here. And we'll go to the next scene, which we do the hardware overview. And then we kind of kick things off from there. I got to demonstrate the Touch ID also. All right. What's nice about these iPads is they're super simple, so it's not difficult to review one of these. So here's a good comment from RD. And actually, one of the things about the Apple line, he says that I like the bezels, gives me a place to put my fingers. One of the things about the iPad, which people don't often know about, is that Apple has a really clever design. So here's what's cool about this. So let's say I'm resting my thumb here on the, oops, if I'm resting my thumb here on the screen, you see how this is ignoring the thumb? And there is not another tablet maker that does this. Isn't that crazy? So if I had like an Android tablet out right now, it wouldn't ignore the thumb. It just ignores it. I mean, it completely ignores it because it's resting here. So when the iPads have very slim bezels, their AI, or whatever you want to call it, that they're using to detect your intention is just knowing to ignore that. Isn't that crazy? And while this is up, I'll show you how my fancy new thing works here. So here, I'll pull up this one from Canal. Watch this, ready? Hit that, boom. Isn't that cool? Comes right from the iPad. I don't know why, but I like the camcorder look of your videos. Most YouTube reviews today have a DSLR mirrorless look. Yeah, you know what's funny is like people either love my stuff or hate it. And what was funny was this camcorder look came out of the fact that I want to shoot live to disk. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I found that if I shot everything live to disk, I could get my videos done quicker because I didn't have to do as much B-roll roll in. So when we cut the camera, we're cutting the camera. And if I'm recording while I'm doing this, it just gets written right to the disk. And I could get fancier cameras, but they cost a lot of money. And my philosophy with streaming is that, or with this business in general, is that you shouldn't spend money on stuff until you really know you need it. And for me, I was always seeing growth in the channel without having to get all fancy. And I think to some degree it looks different, as you say. It's a different look. And some people either love it or think I'm stuck in the past. Probably true of everything. But what I am going to be doing soon is moving this camera back a little bit so it'll blur the background out slightly. I just want to make it look a little less flat. And I've got another light that has been meaning to hook up to catch the back of my head here, so just to kind of draw me out a little bit. So we're going to do a little bit of subtle changes, but not extreme. So that's how it's going to work, hopefully. So yeah, and Kosama Games here says that was flawless. Thank you. And actually, if you all could keep commenting as we're doing these segments, that really helps, because if I miss something while I'm recording it, I can obviously include it and not miss it. All right. So let's go to, I'm going to pick it up from here, and we're going to do our hardware overview. And it's getting trickier now because I upload videos to here and to YouTube and to Amazon. And Amazon doesn't like to mention pricing in videos, so I have to cut the pricing out. So I have to have a very specific gap that we can use for the Amazon version of the video. All right. Let's go do it right there. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this starts at around $329 and goes up from there. These often show up on sale, and last year I got the older version of this iPad for about $249. So just keep on the lookout for discounts and sales and everything, because this is the model that is often frequently discounted. So let's take a look now at the hardware. This looks exactly like the prior generation iPad, the 7th gen. It has a 10.2-inch screen. It is super bright. It's 500 nits. It looks spectacular. It's one of the best displays for a low-end device on the market. It's just good stuff. And what's nice about Apple's low-end products is that they tend to have a nice premium feel for a lower-end product. Their newer, more expensive ones will have fancier accoutrements like better industrial design and thinner bezels, but for a utilitarian, I'm starting to blabber on here. Let's try this one more time. This is why if I had a script, it would be a little bit more efficient, but we'll see what happens. DC147 wants to know, is this a solid upgrade from the 6th gen? I don't think so. I would say if you have a 6th gen and you're happy with it, both my kids have the 6th gen, and I bought this thinking, well, maybe I'll give it to one of them when I'm done, and I'm like, you know what, you're not going to notice the difference when you're using it, so I'm going to probably sell this to one of you when we're done. So that is the question. Kay Arun wants to know, how long do they last? They will last longer than you will make them last. And what I mean by that is that they will likely be broken from you dropping it before it actually stops working. That's been my experience. All right, one more here from DC147, and then we will go back to shooting the review. Do you feel like iPad users will be missing things from higher-end iPads? We're going to talk about that in the video. I don't think you miss a lot. And I have an iPad Pro, and you can run everything on the iPad Pro. So we'll see. You'll see as we get through some of this stuff. DC147, or Dennis Black here was asking, do my kids have, he thought my kids had the 7th gen. No, they have the 6th gen. But we did review the 7th gen before. And then I had to borrow my mom's to review the Logitech keyboard that we reviewed a little while ago. So we looked at, I'm going to recommend this in the thing as we go further in. This is a really nice keyboard case because you get the trackpad built in and it recognizes all the Apple gestures. So I had to borrow my mom's to shoot that because I had bought my mom one of these, the 7th Gen 10.2 last year. So yeah, and as you'll see in the benchmarks, it's going to be faster than the last one, but not graphically. So you get a CPU increase, but you know, you're going to notice that? The other one feels just as snappy as this one does. But the bezels are starting to look dated, aren't they? They're getting big. So the iPad Air, the new one, doesn't have facial recognition, but it has the fingerprint sensor integrated into a power button on the right-hand side. So I thought that was pretty clever. All right, let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this is $329 usually, but these often show up on sale. And if there's going to be a sale on an iPad, it's typically this one because it is at the lower end of the market. So sometimes you can find these for under $300. You just have to be patient and really get those notifications in from your favorite retailers when it does go on sale. Let's take a closer look though at the hardware. There's a couple of different configurations of this one. This is the very entry-level model, which has 32 gigabytes of storage and no cellular connection. You can, though, get one with more storage and a connection to 4G LTE networks. That, of course, will cost you more. So the 32 gig one here is the entry-level model. There's also a 128 gigabyte storage option. So if you are looking for more storage, you can pay a little bit more to get it. And I'm still blabbering on here. Let's try this one more time. I should have talked about the SKUs within the price point. What's getting difficult for me is that I have to strip the pricing out for the Amazon recorded version of this, and I used to really weave the pricing in a bit more to my reviews than I do now, so that's been one of the tricky things. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this starts at around $329, but this is the model of iPad that goes on sale quite frequently. Now the one we're going to review today is the entry-level model, but they do have a few different options available. So the entry-level one here has 32 gigabytes of RAM and only works on Wi-Fi RAM. One more time. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this is about $329 for the entry-level model, but these often go on sale, and in fact the ones that, hang on a second. I forgot to turn off the Do Not Disturb is on, so why am I getting text messages? This is going to take, see, this is what happens. Like if I start it after 3, it never gets done. So that's the trick here. I'm going to turn off all the notifications. So I have Do Not Disturb on, but I guess when it's unlocked, it still delivers messages. I'm not sure. I'm just going to turn that off. Okay. One more time. Let's try this and get it done. Sometimes I feel, you guys ever see that Bill O'Reilly video? We'll do it live. That's what I'm doing. We'll do it live. So I got nobody in the control room to yell at because I am the control room. This is how it works. And hey, here's another good question or point from Kosama here about the Touch ID. I missed the Touch ID, and I missed it before the COVID thing. So when I'm with the mask on now and I'm out and about, I got to keep typing my password in every time. It's so annoying. In the past, the only annoyance was that when I was driving, I couldn't unlock the phone without looking at it, which is still an annoyance. But the greater annoyance now is when I have the mask on, I have to, unlocking is really difficult with Face ID. We got a Amazon question in here from the Amazon chat. I've never had an iPad. This is Sandra Leonard. I've never had an iPad, and because I'm hearing impaired, I like to use earbuds when using the laptop. Can earbuds be used on this model? Yes, they can. Because unlike many Apple products, there is a headphone jack here that you can plug those earbuds into. So you have that as an option. And actually, you could plug in earbuds with the traditional headphone connector, or you could plug in your Lightning earbuds from your iPhone down here, because this is a Lightning connector, so you have both. So you do have options. Yeah, that's the one thing. Like low-end products keep the headphone jacks where the high-end ones don't. And it's crazy because you'd think it costs them. It might cost them, well, they said it cost more to put the headphone jack on, but it clearly doesn't because the lower cost products have them. It's the bezels. If you think about it from the bezel standpoint, I guess maybe you could put it under the screen or something, but the headphone jack has to be, inside about that much. So that's how that works. All right, let's try to get this done here. And hopefully we won't get any more messages. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this is about $329, although you can often find it for less. These iPads go on sale all the time, so if you are patient, you can likely get one for a lower price than what is currently listed. Now this one is the low-end model. It has 32 gigabytes of storage and only works on Wi-Fi networks. They have another version with 128 gigabytes of storage, and there's a whole nother group of these that have 4G LTE modems built in, so you can use them on a cellular network. Performance-wise, all four perform the same, but if you are looking to just get the basics here, the Wi-Fi version, which is what I have, should work just fine. And as you'll see, it's a pretty nicely performing device for a low-end tablet. Now let's take a look at the hardware. This one has a 10.2-inch display, and physically it looks a lot like older iPads do. It's not all that thick, but it's starting to look a little dated compared to some of Apple's newer, more expensive iPads. So you have these very big bezels up here on the top and the bottom. But you do have a fingerprint reader here at the bottom that does unlock very quickly. So if you are masked up during the day, you don't have to worry about face recognition not working. You can just rest your finger on that little sensor there and get in. The other thing that I like about these lower cost iPads is that they still have a headphone jack, which many do not have these days, so you can continue to use your favorite earbuds and microphones in that port there. Your power button is over here. You have your volume rocker there. On the bottom you have speakers. It's not stereo, just coming out of the bottom here. And you have a lightning connector, which is, of course, Apple's proprietary connector that's been on iPads and iPhones for many years now. And that's pretty much it. There is not much to the story here. The display looks pretty nice, although there is a decent size air gap here between where the screen is and where the glass is on the unit. So newer iPads have the screen kind of glued right up to the glass, and it looks really, really nice and modern. This one, again, is a little less modern in its appearance, and there will be a bit of an air gap between the glass and the display on it. All right. I was feeling myself going off course, so I wanted to wrap that segment up, and then we'll pick it back up on me. And I need to go through my list of topics here to make sure I cover them all. So what I'm going to do real quick is play back that segment, and if I was happy with it, then we'll keep it. If not, we'll reshoot it. And what I'm looking for here is to make sure that things are concise, that they make sense, and any feedback you have is appreciated as well. So let's play this back and see if I'm happy with it. 3, 2, 1. Now the price point on this is about $329, although you can often find it for less. These iPads go on sale all the time, so if you are patient, you can likely get one for a lower price than what is currently listed. Now this one is the low-end model. It has 32 gigabytes of storage and only works on Wi-Fi networks. They have another version with 128 gigabytes of storage, and there's a whole nother group of these that have 4G LTE modems built in, so you can use them on a cellular network. Performance-wise, all four perform the same, but if you are looking to just get the basics here, the Wi-Fi version, which is what I have, should work just fine. And as you'll see, it's a pretty nicely performing device for a low-end tablet. Now let's take a look at the hardware. This one has a 10.2-inch display, and physically it looks a lot like older iPads do. It's not all that thick, but it's starting to look a little dated. Take a look at the hardware. This one has a 10.2-inch display, and physically it looks a lot like older iPads do. It's not all that thick, but it's starting to look a little dated compared to some of Apple's newer, more expensive iPads. So you have these very big bezels up here on the top and the bottom. But you do have a fingerprint reader here at the bottom that does unlock very quickly. So if you are masked up during the day, you don't have to worry about face recognition not working. You can just rest your finger on that little sensor there and get in. The other thing that I like about these lower cost iPads is that they still have a headphone jack, which many do not have these days, so you can continue to use your favorite earbuds and microphones in that port there. Your power button is over here. You have your volume rocker there. On the bottom you have speakers. It's not stereo, just coming out of the bottom here. And you have a lightning connector, which is, of course, Apple's proprietary connector that's been on iPads and iPhones for many years now. And that's pretty much it. There is not much to the story here. The display looks pretty nice, although there is a decent size air gap here between where the screen is and where the glass is on the unit. So newer iPads have the screen kind of glued right up to the glass, and it looks really, really nice and modern. This one, again, is a little less modern in its appearance, and there will be a bit of an air gap between the glass and the display on it. I can live with that. Not perfect, but it's fine. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on that, but I think that one came out okay. So I think what we'll do now is we'll kind of segue into what's different about this year. And there isn't much of a difference beyond the chip that they chose. So that's it. It's just a new chip, unless I'm missing something. That's it. And Bryant Mitchell says the headphone jack is not dead. I got another comment here I meant to talk about. I think I haven't talked about this one yet. Oh, so the air gap. Yeah, so we just talked about it. It's the same air gap as the 7th and 6th gen. It really is the same casing. It really feels like, honestly, like it feels just like the 7th generation. 3, 2, 1. Now this is the third revision of the base level iPad we've seen in the last couple of years, and the big question would be, is there anything really all that different with the 8th gen over the 7th and 6th gen? So the big difference on this one versus the 7th generation is that it does have a more powerful processor. It has an A12 Bionic, which is the same chip that's found in the iPhone XS. But as you'll see in a few minutes when we go into some benchmarks, they didn't carry over the graphical performance from that phone. So the performance differences here are not all that significant graphically, but there is some performance increases in CPU. Let me start again. 3, 2, 1. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference here between the 8th generation iPad and the 7th generation that came out not all that long ago? The big difference here is the processor. This has an A12 Bionic chip inside, which is a little faster and more powerful than the prior generation iPad's chip. However, the graphics performance on this, as you'll see in a few minutes, is very similar to the prior generation. It's really the CPU performance here that makes a big difference. And as a result, I don't think a lot of consumers are going to notice all that much of a performance increase on this iPad versus the previous one. Like the previous one, it has 3 gigabytes of RAM, so that might make it a little bit zippier than an iPad you might be upgrading from a few years ago. But generally, it feels to me about the same as the others, and we'll take a look at its performance as we work our way further through the review. I'm going to try to do it one more time. Blah, 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 blah. Let's start this one more time. Yeah, I think actually this is a good point that has been made here. Let me pull up this comment. And I'm going to mention this in the video because Rupinder Pal Singh Randhawa mentions that because it has the A12, you might be getting some future proofing, which means that it will be supported longer, right? Because it does have more of a modern chip versus the prior edition. I will definitely give you that, and that's a very good point. Let me start again. 3, 2, 1. Now you might be wondering what the differences are between this iPad and the 7th generation one that came out about a year or so ago. And they really are very similar in their physical shape and... one more time. 3, 2, 1. Now you might be wondering what the difference is between this 8th generation iPad and the 7th generation one that just came out like a year ago. They actually feel and look the same. They've got the same display, the same cameras and everything else. But this one has a new processor, at least for this level of iPad. It has the A12 Bionic chip, which is a nice performance improvement, at least on paper, over what was in the prior iPads that came in at around this price point. This will get you some future proofing in that you'll probably get more support for future OS updates on this iPad versus the 7th generation one. But what we're seeing in some of the benchmark tests that we've been running on this is that it's not all that much more powerful based on how Apple has tuned it. And we'll get into some of those technical details as we work our way further through the review. Now you do have a front-facing camera here. This is the same as it had before. So this is a 1.2 megapixel camera here in the front. More than adequate for FaceTime calls and Zoom and everything else that you might do with it. So if you have kids learning from home, it should be just fine. On the back, you've got the same 8 megapixel camera that was on the iPad before. These will do 1080p video out of the back at 30 frames per second. You can do 720p slow motion video out of that camera as well. And on the front camera, you can record 720p video at 30 frames per second. Camera quality is not spectacular, but again, good enough and adequate for the price point. All right, that was good. And I thank Rupinder for that suggestion, because I think that is a very good topic to have on there. All right, so we're going to say versus 7th gen. And all right, let's take a look and see how that came out. And if I'm happy, then we'll move on to weight and stuff. So we got the A12 covered. Here, I'll show you what I'm looking at on my sheet here. So we have the A12 covered. We got, and I'll play it back and I'll just cross off stuff as we go here. Let's go 3, 2, 1. Now you might be wondering what the difference is between this 8th generation iPad and the 7th generation one that just came out like a year ago. They actually feel and look the same. They've got the same display, the same cameras and everything else. But this one has a new processor, at least for this level of iPad. It has the A12 Bionic chip, which is a nice performance improvement, at least on paper, over what was in the prior iPads that came in at around this price point. This will get you some future proofing in that you'll probably get more support for future OS updates on this iPad versus the 7th generation one. But what we're seeing in some of the benchmark tests that we've been running on this is that it's not all that much more powerful based on how Apple has tuned it. And we'll get into some of those technical details as we work our way further through the review. Now you do have a front-facing camera here. This is the same as it had before. So this is a 1.2 megapixel camera here in the front. More than adequate for FaceTime calls and Zoom and everything else that you might do with it. So if you have kids learning from home, it should be just fine. On the back, you've got the same 8 megapixel camera that was on the iPad before. These will do 1080p video out of the back at 30 frames per second. You can do 720p slow motion video out of that camera as well. And on the front camera, you can record 720p video at 30 frames per second. Camera quality is not spectacular, but again, good enough and adequate for the price point. All right, so we're getting stuff crossed off here. I'm leaving notes because I want to get some B-roll footage to roll in when Jake edits. So Jake, if you're watching, remind me. So I want to take some pictures with the camera. I'll take some video with it. Now, if I was lazy, I could just take the stuff from last year because it is the same camera, but I'll go out and shoot some video with it just to have a few very quick samples of the video quality. But you don't buy these for cameras, even though, it's funny, whenever I go to not that I go anywhere anymore, but you go to Disney World, I don't want to disparage anybody, but I would more often than not see people walking around with big iPads taking pictures of stuff. It's kind of funny. The new iPads have good cameras. This one, I would use your phone. It's probably got the better camera. So we need to talk about weight. It's 1.08 pounds. Call him back. See, it's still ringing. I have this totally do not disturbed. I wonder why it's doing that. Bear with me for 1 second, folks. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn. I'm going to turn off the. It's for some reason it's synced up with my phone. That's the one thing that I do like about Apple's products is that if you have an iPhone, it links up with everything that your phone can do. And it's actually pretty useful because if, let's say my phone is down here and I'm upstairs getting my coffee, if the phone rings, I could pick the call up on my iPad that might be on the counter. Isn't that cool? So that's useful, but it's not always that great to have. And I love my parents, but they always call me in the middle of the day. So let's just turn on. You know what I'm going to do? Well, yeah, we'll just roll it. We get a call, we get a call. I think I'm going to turn my, I bet you if I turn my phone on Do Not Disturb, that will likely stop phone calls from coming in completely. So let me take a few more questions here as I get organized. One man show says, why on earth would anyone want to carry an iPad to Disney World? I don't know. I see it all the time. It's really funny. And I will say this much, because I have shot B-roll on my iPad Pro, because my iPad Pro does 4K. And so it's nice often to get a big screen to frame up video, as NCS Trev here says. So there is some good reasons why you might want to, although that's because, you know, if you're a professional video person maybe, right? So we'll see. DG Seattle just bought one from Amazon and is sitting unopened, unsure if they want to keep it. Yeah, this will be helpful, I think, in helping you make a decision, hopefully, if we can get through the review here. Recipe Bob says, I'm doing well on my take so far. Good. Keep the feedback coming. This is helpful, everybody, as I'm working on this stuff. All right, so where did we leave off here? We left off on, I need to talk about battery life, because I have tested that. And I need to talk about weight. So I got to memorize here 1.08 pounds and 490 grams. So it is slightly heavier than the prior edition, but not much. All right. So I think I'll talk about battery life first, because I can remember that better than I can on the other front. Okay. And by the way, iPads, great battery life. All of my Apple products actually get great battery life. I'm very happy with the battery life out of my Apple products. And we're going to review the new watch later this week. That might be another review that I shoot. I've been very happy with the battery life on the new watch, and the display is on all the time. I don't think my Series 4 had this, but it has the sleep mode, so I've been using it as a sleep tracker. But it's been messing up my, here's the thing, I like to start my day with everything charged up. And now with the watch, because I'm using it to track sleep, it's not starting the day fully charged. So I'm putting it on the charger when I hop in the shower. It actually charges pretty quick, but it's still like, I just hate like starting the day and getting up and doing stuff before everything is fully charged. So I have to play around with that a little bit more. All right, let me pick it up from here, because our last clip was on the iPad. So we're going to pick it up on me, and we're going to go from here. And then we'll start getting into all the performance stuff, because I think I covered all of the hardware. I do want to mention the screen brightness, so I'll probably bring that up, because I did not bring it up when we covered the display, but I think when we do the web browsing example, we'll talk a little bit about that. And we should probably run the speedometer test on it too. I don't usually do that on tablets though, so maybe I'll run it after the fact. All right, so I think we're good there, and we'll go from there. Okay, hang on everybody, let's pick up the next clip. We're going to do battery life and weight. 3, 2, 1. Now the battery life on this is the same as the prior edition. Apple says you'll get about 10 hours, and I would agree with that assessment if you keep the screen brightness down and not play a lot of games on it. If you're sticking to movie watching and some web browsing, you could probably get close to that mark. My experience typically with these is about 8 to 9 hours, doing a little bit more than the basics and having the screen brightness turned up a little bit more. But generally, I found the iPads to really do well on battery life, and they're often very close to what Apple says you'll get in their marketing, which is sometimes unusual for this industry. The weight on this new one is 1.08 pounds or 490 grams. The one that has the cellular modem built in is a little bit heavier, but marginally so. And it's also slightly heavier than last year's model, which came in at around 483 grams, but it really isn't much to walk around with. If you start adding cases and other accessories, obviously those things will add some weight, but on its own, it is a very lightweight device that isn't too strenuous to carry around with you. It connects to your network via Wi-Fi in this instance, although you do have, again, that, I'm going to stop it there, and then we'll cut back to me. I don't know if it matters that it doesn't have Wi-Fi 6. Maybe I'll just mention it on the next take. Actually, you know what I can do? I can mention it I can mention that when we do the web browsing. That's a good spot to mention the lack of Wi-Fi 6. People are starting to ask about Wi-Fi 6. And the new iPhones all have Wi-Fi 6. All right, so this is going to be weight and battery life. And I'm just logging my clip here. All right. Can you install Fortnite on this? I thought they took it off the store. 3, 2, 1. Now the battery life on this is the same as the prior edition. Apple says you'll get about 10 hours, and I would agree with that assessment if you keep the screen brightness down and not play a lot of games on it. If you're sticking to movie watching and some web browsing, you could probably get close to that mark. My experience typically with these is about 8 to 9 hours, doing a little bit more than the basics and having the screen brightness turned up a little bit more. But generally, I found the iPads to really do well on battery life, and they're often very close to what Apple says you'll get in their marketing, which is sometimes unusual for this industry. The weight on this new one is 1.08 pounds or 490 grams. The one that has the cellular modem built in is a little bit heavier, but marginally so. And it's also slightly heavier than last year's model, which came in at around 483 grams, but it really isn't much to walk around with. If you start adding cases and other accessories, obviously those things will add some weight, but on its own, it is a very lightweight device that isn't too strenuous to carry around with you. It connects to your network. Now the battery life on this is the same as the prior edition. Apple says you'll get about 10 hours, and I would agree with that assessment if you keep the screen brightness down and not play a lot of games on it. If you're sticking to movie watching and some web browsing, you could probably get close to that mark. My experience typically with these is about 8 to 9 hours, doing a little bit more than the basics and having the screen brightness turned up a little bit more. But generally, I found the iPads to really do well on battery life, and they're often very close to what Apple says you'll get in their marketing, which is sometimes unusual for this industry. All right, I can live with that. All right. I'm not feeling I feel fine. I'm not feeling my best as far as delivery is concerned today, but I think I'm getting the points across. All right, so let's go back to our notes here and make sure we've got all the things that I want to talk about covered on the hardware review. So we got all the stuff, we got all the switches and all the other junk done, right? So battery life is done, weight is done, pricing is done. Wi-Fi 6 we have to do. We're going to do that in the course of the web browsing thing. 8 megapixel rear camera is done. So now we're going to move on to performance, and I just need to see where we last left off. The weight on this new lightweight here, because I think I left off there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get our little standout here and get this set up. So I have a couple of questions that came in from Tenzin here. I'll pull one of them up. Who's asking, is this 120 hertz? No, you're not going to get that on the entry-level model, at least not yet. So this is a 60 hertz model. That is it. Although I have not verified this, but Deepayan says that the Samsung tablet does have 120 hertz. I need to check out the Samsung stuff. I looked at one of their other ones, which wasn't. Here's the thing you'll find with iPads versus Android tablets. Generally, the iPads perform like light years ahead of a lot of the similarly priced Android versions, because Apple makes the silicon. So it's pretty good now. Ahmed wants to know what happened to my connection. I don't have it yet. So it's installed. We've got the fiber optic in the thing. I did hear from Comcast this morning. They did confirm that the installation physically is complete. So now they've got to bring over their equipment. So we'll get that done pretty quickly. All right, Signosis here is finding similar scores on Slingshot as I'm finding. So yeah, I think it's getting what it should get, I guess, right? So, I mean, it's good. It's not, I'm not complaining. But, you know, like the A12 chip on the iPhone does better. But it's funny how it's the same as what we saw out of the prior one graphically. I didn't get to this one earlier. Jason 4552 wants to know, is this the same RAM as the iPad Air 2019? And this does have 3 gigs of RAM, just like the prior version did. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get my keyboard out. And Tenzin wants to know, see, this is exactly what we were talking about before, is like you either love the background or you hate it. And those are not random TVs. These are Apple computers. So we have, talk about like history, right? So all the kids in school now use iPads or Chromebooks or whatever. In my day, we had Apple IIs. So this machine I got in 1989? Yeah, 89, 88. This came out in 86. This was the Apple IIgs. It's the 16-bit Apple II. I had an Apple, I think I put it away already. I had an Apple IIe initially. And then I bought this. This I actually bought secondhand. And this is the monitor that came with it. This was a great machine in its day. We had a bunch of these at school. This is a machine that was extremely expensive back in its day. This is a Macintosh SE30. And although it looked like the regular Mac, it was much, much more powerful. It had a 6830 processor, and this was a hot ticket. I think this one was, if I'm not mistaken, it was probably like a $3,000 or $4,000 computer back in 1987 when it came out. Just to put it in perspective on price, super expensive. But you could hook up, it was black and white only, but it had expansion, so you could hook up a color display to it and have a second display going out to it. It's pretty cool. So it's really interesting stuff. And hopefully we'll have an ETA on the install very shortly. So stay tuned, everybody. I'm just going to get this set up for our web browsing demo. And we're going to talk about web browsing, and we'll talk about, probably should get Netflix installed on here too. So let me clear out my browser screen here. And we'll just go to like Google here. Now, by the way, you might be tempted to get one of these like dual trackpad things. The problem is that not every trackpad works, like they all work with the iPad in the sense that you can use the mouse component, but the gestures don't work. So if you wanted to go into, let me pull up a photo real quick here. Let me find a good photo that I can zoom in on. So here's like a photo. So if I had it on screen here, I could use the pinch to zoom, but on this trackpad, it doesn't work. So it's not going to cut it. Okay, so let's go back and get the web browser going. And I think I want to install, you can put Netflix on here real quick. Get that going real quick. And you know something, the lack of Fortnite might be a reason for some folks not to get one of these iPads, right? Because it doesn't support Fortnite. Let me just log into my account here real quick. We're actually making good progress here, so hopefully I can get through. This is now the performance stuff. We're gonna go through this stuff pretty quick. Oops. What kills me about this stuff, though, is that I feel like I did all this before because I did almost. We're going to do exactly the same stuff we did. We did for the last thing. All right. By the way, I love this show, The Good Place. If you haven't seen it, I thought it was just awesome. And it's what's funny about The Good Place is that it's a show that my wife and I both watched. My wife and I don't often like the same shows. She can't stand all my sci-fi stuff. What else did I watch recently? I haven't watched Away yet. I did watch the new Challenger documentary. That was good. I got a bunch of stuff that I want to watch. I've been watching Designated Survivor. There was an Unsolved Mysteries episode that was pretty good. I didn't watch all of those, but there's some good stuff on there. All right, so let us go through. I'm just trying to figure out what I could play on Netflix that won't get me thrown off of YouTube for copyright. Probably nothing. So maybe I'll also get YouTube going on here too and just get that going here. Bear with me for 1 second here, folks. Forgot to install that earlier. But yeah, the one issue that Apple's having that dispute with Epic Games, or Epic Games is having a dispute with Apple, whichever way you want to look at it. So Fortnite is no longer available. Although I did have it on my account. I wonder if I could install it. Let's take a look real quick and see, because I do have it. You know, I did download it when it was available before they took it off. All right, so let's go. You know what I'll do is I will pull up my YouTube channel on here. So we got my YouTube channel like kind of queued up here. I wonder why it's not showing my uploads though. That's weird. Hopefully that's not the way my channel looks when people go to YouTube. We can though watch, like a meta thing, you can watch me live. Let me skip the ad here. Isn't that wild? This is now. That's then. But this is now. Remember that from Spaceballs? That was funny. I enjoyed that movie. Okay, so we got YouTube ready to go. So MacStock says YouTube is making his iPad heat up. Yeah, there could be some issue with that. Let me just go into the App Store here and see if it does let me reinstall Fortnite. I'm just curious. Because this is like one of those things that we complain about when it comes to digital games, right? They could just take it away from you if you didn't install it. Yeah, so if I go look for Fortnite in my account, not there. Even though, I mean, granted, Fortnite's free, but whenever you download a free app, it shows as a purchase. Can't get it anymore. So if I had bought it or bought something through it, not accessible. So there you go. That's the problem with digital media. Okay, so now we are going to go to the web browser. And you know what I'm going to do on YouTube, actually? We're going to queue up let me queue up my 1080p 60 video. I'm going to turn the volume down here. Because I like to show that running. And let me pull it up here and see if I can get Stats for Nerds going on this. So quality, we're going to go to 1080p 60. And can we get the Stats for Nerds here? Let's see. Yeah, you don't get that on here, do you? Okay. Well, we'll just refer to it. Okay, so I think we're good there. All right. All right, I think we're good to kick up our next part of the review. And we'll do this, and then we'll switch over to YouTube. So I can just do one of these deals. Loop, loop. Isn't that cool? I love that. Okay. Get that position. Now I think the last clip we ended up on the iPad here. So we need to start on me so we don't have a jump cut. I don't like jump cuts. I had a professor in college that would fail you for jump cuts, just so you know. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look now and see how this new iPad performs. And we'll start off with some real basic stuff here, like doing some web browsing. So we'll go to the nasa.gov homepage. Normally I just type the address into the thing up there, but you get, yeah, I'm going to start again. Let's try that again. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look now and see how it performs. We will, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look now and see how the new iPad performs. We'll begin with some basic stuff like web browsing. We'll go to nasa.gov here and just see how quickly everything can render in. And as you can see, everything is pretty zippy here. Now I'm connected to my AC wireless network in my house over Wi-Fi. Your mileage, of course, will vary depending on the speed of your internet connection, but it does feel very responsive here as I'm browsing around to different things. And you can also see just how fast everything is as I'm pinching and zooming and doing all of the other things you might do with an iPad while you're browsing the web, so that is good. This does not, though, support the new Wi-Fi 6 standard, but I think for most folks, the AC support will work out just fine. Video playback is also very nice on here. This is a 60 hertz display, so you're not going to get the 120 hertz that you might see on some of the newer devices. But it's able to play 1080p 60 video here from YouTube just fine, and we were also able to watch videos on Netflix and some of the other video services without issue either. And I think I might want to add a little addendum on storage here, because that's where you can run into trouble with downloads and filling up your memory too quickly. Because I would say this, that I am not crazy about iPads as your media device. If like your intention is to buy this to watch Netflix or something, I think there's better choices like the Amazon Fire tablet or something like that, because you can put an SD card in it and download media for travel. This is one area where it may not be as good for that. All right, so we're going to call this web browsing performance. Okay. Let's have a look at that real quick. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look now and see how the new iPad performs. We'll begin with some basic stuff like web browsing. We'll go to nasa.gov here and just see how quickly everything can render in. And as you can see, everything is pretty zippy here. Now I'm connected to my AC wireless network in my house over Wi-Fi. Your mileage, of course, will vary depending on the speed of your internet connection, but it does feel very responsive here as I'm browsing around to different things. And you can also see just how fast everything is as I'm pinching and zooming and doing all of the other things you might do with an iPad while you're browsing the web, so that is good. This does not, though, support the new Wi-Fi 6 standard, but I think for most folks, the AC support will work out just fine. Video playback is also very nice on here. This is a 60 hertz display, so you're not going to get the 120 hertz that you might see on some of the newer devices. But it's able to play 1080p 60 video here from YouTube just fine, and we were also able to watch videos on Netflix and some of the other video services without issue either. All right, that'll work. And I think we're going to do split screen now. So let's talk about split screen. So we ended on me, and I'll try to do something on the other stuff here. Is this, yeah, all right, so I'm just looking through here. Okay. Jake is hopping off for a little bit. Thanks, Jake. We'll see you in a little bit. All right, so for split screen, we're going to do the web browser. So we're just going to kind of do one of these deals. Okay, so let's go and pull back up this video. And we'll kind of run with this. All right. 3, 2, 1. Now you can also do some of the more advanced, is it advanced? I guess it kind of would be. 3, 2, 1. Now what's nice about these low-end iPads is that they do things that some of the more advanced models do. One of those things is split screen mode. So for example, as we're watching a video here, I can grab Safari and dock it here on the side of the screen and be able to browse the web while I am watching YouTube videos. And not all apps support this split screen mode, but many do. In fact, most do at this point. So you can do this kind of work on your iPad that you didn't pay all that much money for. The nice thing about the 7th and 8th generation models versus the older models that came before it is that this does have a 10.2-inch screen versus 9.7, and that does give you a little bit more real estate to do this kind of stuff. All right, let's see how that did. It's a lot more to cover now on these things. Got to make sure you cover all of it. 6 split screen. Take a look at that real quick, and we'll move on. All right, here's split screen. 3, 2, 1. Now, what's nice about these low-end iPads is that they do things that some of the more advanced models do. One of those things is split screen mode. So, for example, as we're watching a video here, I can grab Safari and dock it here on the side of the screen and be able to browse the web while I am watching YouTube videos. And not all apps support this split screen mode, but many do. In fact, most do at this point. So you can do this kind of work on your iPad that you didn't pay all that much money for. The nice thing about the 7th and 8th generation models versus the older models that came before it is that this does have a 10.2-inch screen versus 9.7, and that does give you a little bit more real estate to do this kind of stuff. All right, I can live with that. So we end on the iPad. So we're going to pick things up next on, I guess we're going to do the pencil now. So let's do the pencil. And we're going to do some demos of how the pencil stuff works. So let's go to the overhead view. And I just need to position the camera a little bit better here. Okay. So let's see if the pencil here is paired up. It has not paired itself up yet, so I got to get that going. This was on my daughter's iPad before. It might still be paired up with her other one. So let's see if I can coax this thing into cooperating here. Bluetooth. Okay, pair it up. There we go. Huh. It says the battery on the pencil is not charged, so we got to wait a second for it to charge the thing here. I would love to do your little sample thing, but we got to wait for my pencil to charge up. So hang on a second. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I got to let this charge for a minute or two before we get to the pencil. Let's see if there's anything else on our list here that we can do in the interim. So we can do the keyboard. So maybe we'll do that. The problem is I have to keep the pencil stuck into the side of this thing to charge it, unless I can plug it into, what else do I have that can charge this pencil? I don't know where my little connector went to do the thing there. So maybe we'll just wait a minute or two and see if we can get a little bit of a charge here. So it does give you an indicator as to how your pencil's going. So I don't need much charge. I just need a little bit of charge. So we'll give it like a minute or two, and I'll take some questions while we're waiting. I had it plugged in to the, it was funny. It didn't activate the charge until I paired it up, because I had it plugged into the iPad for about half hour before we got started. Austin Lee wants to know, can I do a drawing? Yes, I will attempt to draw. I will not draw well, but I will give it a shot. We'll pull up notes first, and then we'll do some of the other new features that they've added to it. So let me go do that. Get that set up here. And notes is ready to go. And I got to wait for my notes here to sync up, I think. Let me just start a new note. There we go. So what's happening now is it's downloading or syncing up with all of my iCloud notes, and we're waiting for the pencil to finish charging. So let's see where we're at on that charge status. So we're in the green now, so we might be able to get started in a second. These do charge up pretty quickly. And the one issue that you run into with the first generation, Austin wants me to draw a horse if possible. That's a tall order. We'll see what we can do. And it's the most inelegant Apple thing I've ever seen them do. Because as good as these pencils are, you got to stick it out from the bottom here. So that's the only issue there. Let me take a couple more questions here while we're waiting. Jason asks, do the speakers on each side, or is no? So on this one, the speakers are only on the bottom and they're not stereo. So if you want stereo, you got to put headphones on there. Let's see. RD here says that the pencil charges faster through the iPad, which is probably the case. And there are options out there. So Helen Weber here has a Kindle Fire HD10, and it's a third of the price. So it's one of those things where I think if you're just watching Netflix, you probably don't need this. But if you're doing more, then I think there's reasons to consider an iPad. And what I like about what Apple's done on the low-end iPad, like this one, is that you're not giving up anything. It does everything that all the other iPads do. So you get the pencil support. It does, the split screen like we just demonstrated. It does, there's few things that you can't do on this one that you can do on another one. And I think that's where things really shifted on once they had the 6th generation that came out and they were able to add pen support. So I think that made a big difference. All right, so where did the cap to the pen go? Here it is. Because the other factor here, by the way, so when you are looking at an iPad, the pencil that you have to pick, where is it on my list here? Here it is. The pencil that you have to get for this iPad is the 1st generation pencil, this one, not the new one. The 2nd generation pencil doesn't work with this. Even though this is a new iPad, you have to get the 1st generation pencil. So there you go. And Austin has got a tall order here, but we'll see what we can do. All right, so we got the pencil activated, and we've got to demo a couple of things here with the pencil. So here's a question from Paulo. And this is one of those questions that doesn't have an easy answer. He's asking, is there a device that could compete on equal ground with an iPad? I would say, yeah, the Surface Go is probably close, and at least but it costs more. But what I like about the Surface Go is that it runs a full version of Windows, whereas the iPad here just runs iPad OS, and there's obviously limitations with a mobile OS versus not. Kay Arun asks, can you use the 2nd generation pencil with it? No, it only works with the 1st gen, so you got to make sure you get the right one. The good news is that the 1st gen pencil costs less, so there is that advantage. Sweet Boy's asking about using it on how much it costs, and it costs about $320. So that is what it costs right now, but you can often find it for less than that. And if you go to the Amazon link in my video description, if you're on YouTube, it'll take you right to Amazon, so you can see how it works. All right, so now we last left off on the split screen, so we're going to pick it up on me with the pencil, and we're going to do some writing and some drawing. You can see how awful I draw horses. Okay. Right, so let's get the ball rolling here. 3, 2, 1. Now, like the prior two 3, 2, 1. Now, like the last two low-end iPads, this new one supports the Apple Pencil, but it's important to note that the Apple Pencil it supports is the 1st generation pencil, the one that looks like this, versus the 2nd generation pencil that is for the iPad Pro and the new iPad Air. Also, there are alternative pencils that cost less that you might want to consider. One that we've looked at before is the Add to Knit Note, and that one, although it doesn't have all the features of the Apple Pencil, is a nice low-cost alternative that uses Apple's digitizer technology to work. And I really think that the Apple digitizer and the Apple Pen input is probably the best on the market. So if you're just taking notes or something, it feels very natural. The second the pen gets remotely close to the iPad, it will ignore your wrist on the screen here, as you can see, and I can start drawing stuff. Somebody in my live stream chat wanted me to draw a horse, which I'll try to do here. So you can see just how really low latency the drawing is and just how effective it is as a pen input device. My artwork is not spectacular, but it really, I think, is, again, the best in the business here. Now, one thing that you can also do with this is have varying degrees of pressure detected. So if I go here to the marker, I'll just select a different color here. If I am drawing a light line here, it's going to be what you see there. But if I put my pen down harder, you can see it gets darker. And it's also able to detect tilt. And all three of these factors, let me start this again. I'm going to do this whole thing all over again. I think I can probably cut it, because I was kind of futzing around with it a little bit. So let's take a look and see what we can salvage from that take. Because it's actually two features that are unique to this pencil, which is pressure and tilt, which is not on all the other ones. And hopefully Austin, my horse, was a good horse for what you asked. Austin was in the Amazon chat asking about drawing a horse. So let me just go and Apple Pencil Part 1, cut before additional features. So let's just watch this real quick and see where we can have a good clean cut. He says it needs a face. 3, 2, 1. Now, like the last two low-end iPads, this new one supports the Apple Pencil, but it's important to note that the Apple Pencil it supports is the first generation pencil, the one that looks like this, versus the second generation pencil that is for the iPad Pro and the new iPad Air. Also, there are alternative pencils that cost less that you might want to consider. One that we've looked at before is the Add to Knit Note, and that one, although it doesn't have all the features of the Apple Pencil, is a nice low-cost alternative that uses Apple's digitizer technology to work. And I really think that the Apple digitizer and the Apple Pen input is probably the best on the market. So if you're just taking notes or something, it feels very natural. The second the pen gets remotely close to the iPad, it will ignore your wrist on the screen here, as you can see, and I can start drawing stuff. Somebody in my live stream chat wanted me to draw a horse, which I'll try to do here. So you can see just how really low latency the drawing is and just how effective it is as a pen input device. My artwork is not spectacular, but it really, I think, is, again, the best in the business here. Now, one thing that you can also do with this is have varying degrees. So I might just redo this whole thing, because I'm not too crazy about how that came out. So let me just we're going to do a redo on this. Just going to make a new note and start from scratch here. All right, one more time. Let's do this. All right, so we're going to go here, and we're going to just get rid of that last clip. It wasn't bad, but I could explain it a little bit better. And sometimes, like, I'll come back to the clips that I reject and actually put them back in, or grab a portion of one and another portion of another one. But if it flows better, I like to go there. Okay. Let's start this again. 3, 2, 1. Now, like the other recent iPads at the low end of their line, they support the Apple Pencil, but note that you need the first generation Apple Pencil for this iPad. Oops, my thing is not responding here. Hang on a second. That was weird. One more time. Oops. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Oops. 3, 2, 1. Now, like the prior two generations on the 3, 2, 1. Now, like the prior two generations of the entry-level iPad, this one supports the Apple Pencil, but it still only supports the first generation pencil, not the second generation one. And this pencil looks like this. This is the one you got to look for. The good news is this costs less than the second generation pencil. Just don't buy the second gen because it's, one more time. One more time. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Now, like the prior two generations of the entry-level iPad, this new one supports the Apple Pencil, but it only supports the first generation pencil, not the second generation one. The good news, though, is that the first generation Apple Pencil costs less, and it charges just by plugging itself into the bottom of the iPad into its Lightning connector. This little cap here comes off and you can get it charged. I have long believed that the Apple Pencil is the best digital pen on the market. It really works nicely. It rarely picks up my wrist by accident, so the second the pen gets close to this thing, it just ignores my wrist input and I can start drawing. Somebody in my live chat here wanted me to draw a horse, which I can do